Hola a todos. Me llamo Sara. Soy aquí en Madrid y con mi amiga Laura. Hi Laura.
Hi.
Por traducir las cuestiones aquí en los comentarios. So if you have any questions that you want to send in Spanish, Laura can help because my Spanish sucks. I'm so sorry. In the meantime, I have some questions that you guys sent in earlier. We also have a light that illuminates the giant size of my forehead. So enjoy the forehead. How do you say forehead?
La frente.
La frente grande. Okay, so first questions, we had something from Yolanda Parra. She said, do you have any pre-acting rituals? She actually had a million questions, so we'll get through them all. Do you have any pre-acting rituals is her first question. And the answer is yes. I always come to work about an hour early. And I go to my trailer and I lock the door and I light some candles and I do yoga and I listen to music. My favorite is actually Appetite for Destruction, the Guns N' Roses album. It's really great to do yoga too, believe it or not. And then I kind of get grounded in the day because often I have to come to work really early in the morning. So I sort of wake up with yoga and Axl Rose. And that's sort of my way to come into work. If it's an intense day, I'll usually have something to read that puts me in mind of the character, whether it's poetry or a novel or the news. That's usually kind of how I get started. Yolanda's next question was, what do you think your character in the show thinks about most of the time? I think if you're talking about the first season of Colony, which by the way will be on the Sci-Fi Channel here in Madrid in May, I think 8th of May, I think. I think in the beginning, she thinks about very basic things, living under an occupation when you have ration kits and bread lines and things like that. I think she spends a lot of time thinking about how to feed her family, how to protect her children, and thinking constantly about how to find her son, Charlie, who has gone missing in the arrival. Did I get to keep anything from the set? So there was one thing that I kept that I was allowed to, and one thing that I stole. After the first season, there's a little unicorn sculpture. It's maybe this big. And it was in Gracie's bedroom. And I loved it, and I thought it was really sweet, and it explained a lot about who her daughter was, and that there was still this sense of innocence, even in the occupation. So I stuck that in my handbag on my last day on set. And then at the end of season 2, when they were taking down the sets, I asked if I could have the mirrors from the Yonk, which, as you get to know the show, is Katie's bar. It's short for Jokna Patofa, but if you can figure out that reference, it's from a William Faulkner novel. And there are these beautiful, beautiful mirrors that have the menu on them. And so I bought those to put up in my house. My favorite quote from the show, I would probably have to get back to you on, but I think it would probably have something to do with, actually, no, I can answer that. We are Geronimo, I think would be probably my favorite quote from the show. So thank you, Yolanda, for those questions. Raquel Carrasco asks, do you think humans would be able to leave behind all the bad feelings among us and join all, not just American citizens, to fight the aliens? I think that's kind of the central question of the show, which is, are we willing to come together to protect one another, or do we let the things that divide us as human beings define us? My hope is that yes, we would all be able to come together. I think there are aspects of the resistance that are alive all over the world. As the show goes on, you get to know more about what's happening in South America, what's happening in Europe. And while there's definitely oppressive regimes like the one in the Los Angeles block, there is also a live resistance. And I think maybe if an alien invasion were to teach us anything, it would be that we are far more similar than we are different. And that it's time for us to go like this as human beings instead of like this. Great question. Victor Rey, how do I pronounce that? Rey, sorry. Victor asks, what do you think would happen on Earth if aliens arrive? Would they conquer us, or will we live in harmony? You know, I think human history has taught us that we have an incredible ability to find war and conflict all over the place. But I also believe that maybe if there is other intelligent life in the universe that has figured out how to travel from wherever they are to wherever we are, one of the things that they would have learned is how to nurture peace and manage conflict without resorting to violence. And so perhaps if there were aliens that came to this planet, we could learn a tremendous amount from them about peace. I think it's also possible that there are aliens out there who have looked at our lives here on Earth and maybe who have decided that they want no part of it until we learn our lesson and learn to be a little kinder to one another. Hola, 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 hola. There's all kinds of people saying hi. Hi. Juan Carlos asks, how many days are you going to stay in Madrid? Not long enough. I'm afraid that I was just in Lisbon promoting Colony over there. And I have to be in London this weekend. So I'm here just long enough to have some really amazing wine and all the jamon serrano in Madrid. There's none left. I've eaten all of it. I'm very sorry. You're going to have to go find some more pigs. I'm sure it'll be okay. And then I've got to be on a plane very soon, I'm afraid. But I am here long enough to take my daughter to the Reina Sofia and show her Guernica, because I think that's one of the most extraordinary things that I got to see when I was in Madrid before, when I had a little more time. So I'm glad to be able to share that with her. Are you going to do another event in Madrid this week? I'm afraid I can't. Like I just said, I've got to get on a plane and go to London, but I will be back. I promise I will be back. Let's see. If we were, Carmen D asks, if we were invaded by aliens like happens in Colony, what would your survival kit consist of? I actually have a go bag. I live in the country and out in kind of in the woods on a little farm. And so being prepared is kind of an important thing for me. So when I travel, especially if I'm shooting in LA, I have a go bag packed in my car all the time in case something strange happens there, like a fire or an earthquake or something like that. And I think one of the most important things that's in there are iodine pills, because humans can't survive very long without clean drinking water. Iodine pills to purify any water is an important one. Duct tape. I know it sounds silly, but it's kind of magical. I was hiking once in the Sierras for a couple of weeks with a friend of mine, and he didn't like hiking boots, so he wore sneakers. And we were out in the middle of the woods with no cell phones, because this is a long time ago, and the sole of his shoe separated, and we duct taped it back together, and he was able to hike on it for another 20 miles. So duct tape is a miracle. I would also want chocolate in my go bag, because there's no point in surviving if you can't eat chocolate, in my opinion. Let's see, Marisol asks, of the characters you've played, which one is your favorite? I think in some ways the answer is always the character you're playing right now, because your job is to love your character and to live with them and to make them a part of who you are. So in a way, I think you're always going to say the character you're playing right now, but I feel more connected in some ways to Katie than anyone I've ever played before. And I think that's because I hope that I'm like her. Her courage and her passion for not only the safety of her own family, but the safety of her species and of her city and her country and her world. I admire her commitment to freedom and sort of social justice everywhere. Oh, sorry. Are there things I recommend you to visit the Santiago?
Bernabeu, that's the Real Madrid stadium.
Oh, the Real Madrid stadium. If I'm not mistaken, Gail Ann Hurd, who is a great friend of mine, who produces The Walking Dead, among other things. She's one of the sort of great powerhouse female producers in Hollywood. I believe she lives for Real Madrid. So maybe if I have enough time, I'll swing by and I'll get her a jersey because I think she'd love it. Unfortunately, I was born in the States, and so I've only seen one live football match, but I am trying right now to produce a documentary on a women's football tournament that takes place in Uganda at a refugee camp there. I'm trying to do a documentary about the ways in which football and athletics can heal women refugees. So keep your fingers crossed. I may have a documentary eventually for you on football. And maybe Real Madrid would come and send us some jerseys to help support these girls while they're playing in the refugee camp. Let's see, what other questions do you have?
Carlos is asking you if there's going to be any events when, like, you're going to do any public appearances today in Madrid.
This is it. And Carlos, thank you for being here. You know, these trips are always too short. You know, my daughter came with me to Europe this trip, which was amazing, but my son is 4 and he's at home. So while I would love to spend more time here, I think this trip will be short so that maybe when he's a little older to make the trip, we can come here for a little bit longer as a family. Let's see, where were we here? Oh, why do you think we are going to love Colony? Asks Milagros L. You know, I think it's interesting. I think in some ways, Colony is more relevant in Europe and in South America, in some ways even than it is in North America, because unless you're Native American, in North America, there really hasn't been an occupation or a dictatorship the way that we tell the story of in Colony. And so I think when you're talking about the story of Colony, it's something that's very relevant to a European audience. Whether it's Mussolini or Franco or Hitler, I think many countries in Europe have been subject to dictatorships and to occupation. And so that's the story of Colony, the story of a family that's trying to survive in this kind of a world where you're constantly asked to make the choice between sacrificing your beliefs to keep your family safe or acting on your beliefs and risking your family. So I think in many ways, this might be a story that resonates as much in Spain as it would anywhere else in the world, and maybe even more than it does in the States. That's just my thinking. Tell me what you think when you see it. Let's see. How have you prepared for your character on Colony? Asks Carmen Prieto. Prieto? Is that right?
Prieto.
Prieto. Okay. I want to get your name right. I spent a lot of time reading. I read an amazing book called A Train in Winter about women in the French resistance during the Nazi occupation of Paris and Vichy France. And I also, I watched The Battle of Algiers, which is an amazing film. If you haven't seen it, it's really worth taking a look at. It's about the Algerian Revolution shortly after the Second World War. And it was one of the actors in it who plays one of the revolutionaries was actually a revolutionary himself. He's sort of playing a version of himself. It's an incredible film. And I watched it because Juan Jose Campanella, who directed our pilot and many of our very first and second seasons, Juan recommended it to me because Juan grew up under dictatorship in Argentina. And it was important to him to educate North American actors on a little bit of what it was like to live under those circumstances. So that was an amazing film, and I tend to rewatch it before every season. So I think that might be almost all the, which is my favorite sport, asks Juan Casado. Llaneza. Sorry, hard name for me. My favorite sport. I used to practice aerial arts. I was on a trapeze for a while in grad school. So I love that, if you can consider it a sport. I grew up watching women's volleyball because where I grew up in Hawaii, we didn't have any professional sports teams. And so the women's collegiate volleyball was our most successful team. And they were amazing. They were called the Rainbow Wahine. And they gave me a really strong sense of the power of women athletes, and also the ways in which that athletics can really make women stronger and teach them about leadership and teamwork and all of that. There's actually a documentary called Rise of the Wahine that I narrated, that a friend of mine created, about that team and the ways in which they kind of changed the state. It's really sort of amazing. I'm trying to make a movie about that too. So stay tuned. Yeah, I think we might be almost out of time. I'm so sorry. It's a quick trip and it's a quick visit, but thank you so much for joining me here today. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Say ciao loud. And again, Colin will be on Sci-Fi in Madrid in May 8th. And I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think. I'm on Facebook myself. I'm on Instagram. I'd love to hear your feedback, because everything you tell us as storytellers can make our work better. So I appreciate your feedback and your participation. And I'll talk to you again soon. Bye. Now someone's turning this off.